What is up, everybody? Happy Tuesday to you. I'm in between a training class right now, but I was just catching up with some news, some reoccurring things came in my feeds, and I'm just like, okay, let me just speak on this real right quick. So the first is Eboni K. Williams. She did an interview with Ayanna Van Zandt in which Ayanna asked her, would you date a bus driver? And obviously, if you know her background, she's an educated black woman, right? I think she's part of that black bourgeoisie, right? And obviously that particular group have a set mindset of how they have been programmed and conditioned to talk about black people. So it's really important for people to sort of understand the segments, and I say this all the time, of black America. Who are you talking about in which segment? Because you can break the black American community off into different segments. You can do it from an economic segment, educational segment, and obviously more of a social cultural segment. And and so with Eboni K. Williams, she's more of that black bourgeoisie, right? And so they have a different mindset, right? And I've said this before, the black liberal and the black conservative, their mindset about the lower class black sometimes really does not differentiate in many degrees. There's still some level of black supremacy when you are dealing with blacks who may have come from a situation of privilege or may have not gone through things as tough as or as hard as other black people. And we have to concede that just like the white folks, in their different segments have their good old boys clubs, right? Their exclusive elitist clubs. Black people do too. And so when you think about her comments of not wanting to date a bus driver, it's like, that's obviously her opinion and that's her choice, right? And sometimes it boils down to, and if you're a Kevin Samuels supporter, this is going to come back on you because Kevin Samuels set this marker for what a high value person was. And it's somebody who makes a certain amount of money and they align themselves with certain people that are in that status. So with those words being eaten, you can't really go too hard on Eboni K. Williams for doing exactly what these black men are saying is acceptable, meaning that you get into a higher stature in life, you start aligning yourself more with people who are in that status, right? And some people, they're not like that, right? Some people, it doesn't matter how much money they make, how much they come up, they're never going to sort of forget or look down on people who are still trying to get there, right? And I think that the comment was very snooty, it was very bougie, right? But it wasn't very surprising to me because there is a segment of black America who has this mental disposition of superiority above other people. I mean, these are a lot of blacks who you hang out with your PhDs and your obsessive blacks with education. I went to this school, I graduated from that school, I have this degree. And a lot of them, they can argue a logical, well-rounded point to save them their lives, but they have these degrees and these titles that really makes them that acts their value to them. So it is, for unfortunately for Eboni K. Williams, she has all of this background, all of this experience, but she's still not intelligent enough to kind of look at her community as a whole and say, you know what, I am going to help my community. I am going to elevate my community, but and I'm not going to look down on people who are just trying to make it. And that's basically what her comment boiled down to is she was looking down on people who really are just trying to make it in this world, make a living, sustain themselves. And if there's black men who are good to black women who have been driving buses for decades, have a good family, they've been able to support their family, and that is nothing to look down on. Matter of fact, that is the sustainability that any woman, any reasonable woman would want. You can get some of these high value men like Kevin Samuels was talking about, right? And They can treat you like a dog. They can treat you like an object. They can treat you like an option, right? Because according to these guys, some of these guys, once you get into a certain status, your woman is an option. She's an option, right? That means that you can have a side piece and have your woman at the same time, and she can't say anything, right? Because you're a high value man, right? And so I think that, unfortunately, that is her attitude, right? It's a very bourgeoisie attitude, but it's not surprising to me. I mean, I know a lot of Black women who make really good money that have these standards of, I need to be aligned with this type of man. And it's so funny when this conversation was going on. I asked myself that question too. I was like, would I date a guy, who, was a bus driver? Or even there's this guy at McDonald's, right? And he's so nice, very polite guy, very gentlemanlike. And, he works at McDonald's. Now, this man is in his 50s, right? And I haven't dove into his situation to kind of see, is, McDonald's like this retirement job for him, and he has, some income that he's, maintaining and functioning off of, and this is just something to not tap into that. I don't know what his situation is, right? You don't know what a bus driver's situation is really, because they could be driving that bus, happily driving that bus, and they could have all kinds of real estate properties on the side. That has nothing to do with that bus. So it's good not to judge people, that's for sure. But I was thinking to myself, if I found a really good man and he was a gentleman, he was strategic, he had a good, firm, sound mind on his head where I can say, I can trust this guy's leadership. I can partner with this guy. I don't care if I make more money than this guy. He's a good man. He's going to treat me right, and he's going to protect us, because sometimes, I am that type of woman where I realize at this stage in my life, I almost need a man to protect me from myself, because I'll be going hard, I'll be exhausting myself, and I do like to have a man around to say, babe, no, you're not going to do that. You're going to quiet your storm. You're going to chill. Sometimes it's good to have a good man that can save you from yourself. And sometimes some of those men come from men that don't come from these upper echelon, sort of environments where they don't really have to be faced with challenging reasoning, because they're not faced with the same challenges and experience as somebody who's living and going through the school of hard knocks. So sometimes you can actually find more of a valuable, sound man to deal with who's not hyper wealthy, and not, no shade on my hyper wealthy guys, because there's a lot of sound and reasonable men up there that they wouldn't be wealthy, some of them, if they weren't, because a lot of them don't come from legacy wealth. So, that's just to say that, people are going to be upset about that comment for sure. Because it does offend a whole class of people who at, the basic level of Black America, like many of us are there. So you're downing, essentially Black men, who are working functional jobs, and you're making them feel bad about their job choice. It's sort of like that engineering mindset versus the technicians. For some reasons, they have their mindset that engineers are better than technicians, but I've met a lot of technicians, guys who have been working on cars like forever. They just didn't want to go to school and get an engineering degree. Like, those guys are badass. They are badass. They can build the car no problem, which a lot of engineers cannot do. So they may get concentrated on a portion of the car, and you might just be a CAD engineer. You ain't really out there doing the whole thing, okay? So, don't downplay some of these guys, because, I got some friends, they are with men who are, blue collar, working men, and they have been married forever to these men. And these men do everything they can to make that woman happy. Like, they have a happy, healthy marriage, because nobody's competing. Nobody's having this artificial need to keep up with somebody else. It's just not like that. So um, that was that. There was another topic because that Ebony K. Williams, oh, just pearly things. Now, I said in my crappy little artistic video that Pearl needed to keep her mouth off of Black people, stop trying to infiltrate the Black community, right? With trying to be an authority about Black people, because you're not going to resonate to Black people, right? And so I noticed with her fallout, maybe she's losing views. She's going after a lot of Black male content creators or whatnot. And it's not looking good for her. It doesn't look good for her. I'm looking at her video where she's kind of coming at some of these African American or African content creators, and I feel like she thinks she has an army of Black people behind her to be able to flex like she is, but she's going to realize that a lot of your Black people that are following you, they're from overseas, right? They are not foundational Black Americans. And most of your content is more of a stab at foundational Black Americans, where, my thing is, and there was this one financial advisor or something like that. He's out here talking and he's like, racism is, for broke people. And it's like, you can say that with your Caucasian face. And I'm not talking that, when I assess America, there is a level of privilege in this country, and it is white privilege, but it's really just, the privilege is not so much that Black people can't get ahead, but then again, it is that Black people can't get ahead. Because when I assess like my situation or my banning from LinkedIn, I am not your stereotypical Black person. And the one thing I find is that when you do have intelligent Black people who can talk about things pragmatically, not very emotionally, we get shadow banned, we get restricted or whatever. And at the head of who is doing this, even to Black people, there are white faces there. Maybe they are not white Christians. Maybe there's something else white within a white segment. But there is a level of privilege and supremacy in being in a position to keep somebody down and actually using that. LinkedIn, unrestrict my account. You already have my ID. Your feds have already verified my identity, LinkedIn, unrestrict my account. So anyways, I'm going to leave it at that. Just pearly things. You really need to diversify your conversation away from Black relationships because you're not doing a good job. I think a lot of Black people are starting to call you out on your phoniness, down to even your subject matter expertise on these topics. You are obviously leeching. I think that it's rubbing people the wrong way. And I think O'Shea Duke Jackson, even though he's been going crazy in on this woman or whatever, I think he's justified in a lot of, respects because you are trying to be in the manosphere, right? Back in the day, women were not in men conversations. You got to leave the conversations for men to men, right? And I think a lot of these women are trying to be these faces in the manosphere where, I agree with you. And it's like, you can agree with it, but bottom line, you look weird and contradictory as hell putting your lips on male conversations. I mean, I've listened to some of her discussions and I'm just like, why are you facilitating this? Why are you facilitating this? And to me, the manosphere has allowed people like Just Pearly Things to infiltrate them, right? You've allowed this feminist to pretend like they're your friend and infiltrate your space. So you're bad, your fault. Kevin Samuels, I'm sure he gave her some love or calling her out as a female face to co-sign some of the things that he was saying. And y'all just let that run wild. And now y'all got all these women in your manosphere, right? Talking about man stuff and getting y'all all divided. I'm looking at some of the divide and some of this Black YouTube. Pearly Things has done a great job doing that. just dividing people, audiences, and content creators in the Black YouTube space. And it's just like, lesson learned. Lesson learned.